This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Chinese President Xi Jinping pays tribute to outstanding members of the Communist Party of China as it celebrates its 100th anniversary. Ethiopia declares unilateral ceasefire in Tigray as rebels claim regional capital. And 60 nations gather in Rome to discuss a threat posed by ISIL. This is Africa Live. A warm welcome to the show. I am Peninah Karibe. Let's have a look at the stories coming up this hour. In business, Tanzania to study cryptocurrency as it readies to adopt it. And in sports, Ghanaian boxer Samuel Taki looking to impress at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games. The Communist Party of China is honoring its outstanding members ahead of its centenary on July 1st. Xi Jinping, General Secretary of the CPC Central Committee, handed out the July 1st medals at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing this morning. CGTN's Zhao Yunfei reports.
Honor Guards present the July 1st Medal, the party's highest honor. Featuring the CPC emblem and a 5-pointed star, the medals are awarded to party members who have made exceptional contributions to the party and country. Xi Jinping, General Secretary of CPC Central Committee, presents the award. Among the honorees are those who've contributed to China's revolution, reform and opening up, poverty eradication, and the building of a modernly prosperous society in all aspects. One of them spoke on behalf of the group to thank the party.
I take the party's reputation very seriously and the title of CPC member very seriously. What we have done are the things that are still being done by lots of CPC members. The party's centenary is coming soon. I sincerely wish for the party to remain young forever, the prosperity and strength of the great motherland, and the happiness and well-being of its people.
The CPC Central Committee says the honorees have created spiritual treasures for the party. Among the 29 medal recipients, 4 are over the age of 100. 3 are honored posthumously. General Secretary Xi urged all party members to learn from these everyday heroes.
July 1st medal recipients are heroes coming from and deeply rooted in the people. They are ordinary heroes who are dedicated to their work without a complaint. Their deeds and spirits can be learned by others. They prove through concrete actions that every party member can make great contributions to national rejuvenation for the party and the people, with firm faith, strong will of striving and resilience, and taking actions at usual, critical and difficult times.
Besides awarding the July 1st medal, the CPC is also recognizing 349 outstanding members, 262 workers, and 309 grassroots organizations. This is the first time the Communist Party of China has awarded the July 1st medal, as it celebrates 100 years since it was founded. More will be handed out in the future on major anniversaries. Zhao Yunfei, CGTN, at the Great Hall of the People, Beijing.
Earlier, we spoke to Professor Xiao Lu from the Renmin University of China. He talked about the qualities of the recipients who are awarded the July 1st medal.
They consider themselves as ordinary people. They consider themselves as warriors because they are called heroes. Well, what makes people to called heroes? Because they fight in the front line of different sectors of the cause. For example, they are fighting the poverty, they are fighting the sand, they're protecting the kind of environment, and they are fighting the loss of education. They even protect the borderland for China. So they share the kind of the spirit of perseverance, and they share the spirit of insistence, and they share the spirit of responsibility. I think that's the common quality of this kind of awardees. We have seen that the 29 recipient of the award, they are just a kind of normal or ordinary workers, ordinary police officer, ordinary kind of scientists in their respective fields. So I think in the future, what the Chinese authority expect from the people is that everyone holds on to a high level of hope, and everyone holds the future kind of prospect and responsibility and this kind of dedication, because each and every party member are the actors and the participants of the great cause.
The Communist Party of China is among the world's most successful political parties over the last century. Our various correspondents spoke to several political leaders on the lessons African nations can learn from the CPC's development agenda.
Now China is now the second economic power, and it's en route, maybe in the next decade or so, to emerge as the premier economic power of the world. This is how it should be, because for the last 5,000 years, the Chinese civilization has been continuous. So there is something which is in Chinese statecraft, which has made them withstand the pressures we other civilizations have fallen by the wayside. But the good thing is that the Communist Party has taken those positive aspects of Chinese history and fused them with a modern approach to economic management.
I am taking the opportunity as a representative of the Al-Wafid Party, which has been established 102 years ago. This proves that there are similarities in the history and struggles of both countries and political thinking in the last century. The people and youth must look at history and struggles of the fathers and leaders who began the struggle in China and learn from it. We should all work together towards developing humanity, spreading peace and justice.
I want to congratulate the people and the party, the ruling party, the Communist Party of China, for attaining this huge growth, huge development, which in fact emulates the rest of the world. We, my country, also learns a lot from what they have accomplished in areas, especially in the areas of poverty alleviations, which has alleviated millions of Chinese out of poverty on a regular basis, in the areas of comprehensive development that actually, the trajectory that elevated China to this level. As you have said, from developing nations category to the level of the developed nations, and as a country with the second largest economy, with the second most powerful nation on the planet Earth. They must be congratulated for this, and the rest of the world, countries like ours, have a lot to learn from them in the areas of reform which we are undertaking, and in the areas of, as I have said, poverty alleviations, in the areas of fighting corruptions, capacity building.
For the anniversary of the Communist Party in China, we must stress that the Chinese president is a great leader who looks at us as good friends. Myself, as Vice President of the Arab Parliament, I confirm that China is the first to promote human rights here and the first to support Arab countries and doesn't interfere except to benefit the countries in the region. I tell the Communist Party you have delivered a successful political roadmap for China, a model for political parties around the world. The Communist Party will remain and grow even more. The Chinese Communist Party is a successful model for economic, political and cultural renaissance, with strong ties with Egypt in particular.
Chinese ambassador to Zambia, Li Jie, has visited the residence of Zambia's late president, Kenneth Kaunda, to pay homage to his family members. The Chinese ambassador said the passing of the leader is a great loss to Zambia. Kaunda led Zambia to independence in 1964 and became its first president. Zambia was also the first country in Southern Africa to establish ties with China. Since then, the two nations have supported each other through various projects. Meanwhile, the daughter of the late former president said she was grateful to the Chinese embassy for mourning with them, and she also cherished the long-standing friendship between China and Zambia. Kenneth Kaunda died at the age of 97 this June.
The ambassador from China to Zambia for his kind words. for coming to spend time with us, for being with us this afternoon, to sign the book of condolences and to spend time with us, consoling us. As His Excellency said, Zambia and China have a relationship that dates back to the 60s, I think, if not the 50s. So we're just grateful that he took time to come and be with us during this difficult time.
In Ethiopia, the government has declared a ceasefire in its war-torn Tigray region. The announcement comes as rebel fighters claim control of the regional capital, Mekelle. Ethiopia's government has not yet confirmed the loss of the city. The unrest in Tigray began 8 months ago when the federal government launched a military offensive against the region's ruling party, the Tigray People's Liberation Front. The conflict has left behind a humanitarian crisis, with the United Nations reporting more than 5 million people in urgent need of food aid. The nation's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has denied that there is hunger or famine conditions in Tigray. He says Ethiopian authorities have been committed to distributing food aid. Right, so for more on this, let's go live to Girum Chala in Addis Ababa. Girum, have authorities confirmed that indeed troops have pulled out?
Control of Ethiopian National Defense Force alongside the federal police has been widely reported, and it's being reported at the moment from the Tigray capital, Mekelle, by the way. And the Tigray TPLF party is now in control of the Mekelle city. But as you've said earlier, the Ethiopian government has officially said nothing about the loss of the capital city itself, but it said unilateral cessation of hostility. Sometime we have also heard from military sources that the Ethiopian National Defense Force are in few kilometers buffering out of the Mekelle city itself, waiting for developments there. So this is what we know so far.
And what are the details of this ceasefire, Girum?
Well, the point here, according to the government, which, by the way, released a statement about it, saying that the aim of the unilateral cessation of hostilities is in order to give way for peace and if parties. The government said that they are not going to fire at any in Tigray at the moment, unless and otherwise it's fired at to. And they're saying that anyone interested to talk to, by the way, they say that they have seen signs of negotiations from the TPLF side. So anyone coming in the front will be negotiated with, and then peace must be prevailing in that regional state. The other thing they said is the farmers, now that it's a rainy season, need to be given peace so that they can harvest, and the hunger issue that has been talked about a lot can be also prevented. So the cessation of hostilities, the idea is unilaterally decided by the government to give a peace way and also to allow farmers farm. But at the same time, we should know that TPLF has confirmed nothing. They actually vowed to continue the war until all forces to go out of the Tigray regional state itself.
All right, so Girum, the UN has been talking of a humanitarian crisis in that region, talking of 5 million people in urgent need of food aid. What we've heard from humanitarian agencies is that they could not access that region. So what do these latest developments now mean in regards to that situation?
Peninah, it means a lot. As you might simply understand, peace was something that brought all of this chaos in the regional state. Lack of food, eviction of people, and disruption of almost everything in that regional state. And as you've said, making people vulnerable to lots of problems, including including insecurity itself, and also most people cross borders finding shelter, food, and also the most important.
All right, I apologize for that weak signal we're having with Girum, but really he's given us most of the details about that ceasefire agreed upon in Tigray region in Ethiopia. You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a short break coming up. 60 nations gather in Rome to discuss a threat posed by ISIL. And the World Food Programme appeals for funds to mitigate acute food shortage in South Sudan.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climate and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo, Juba, Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Foreign ministers and senior government officials from 60 countries have been meeting in Rome, Italy, to discuss the threat posed by Islamic State in Africa. Italian Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio said on Monday he wanted to set up an international task force to combat ISIL on the continent. Islamic State initially gained prominence in the Middle East, but have since expanded their influence to Africa. ISIL affiliates have claimed recent gains in Nigeria, the Sahel, Mozambique and the DRC. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken said the U.S. supports the Italian initiative.
We strongly support Italy's initiative to make sure that the coalition against Daesh focuses its expertise on Africa, while keeping our eye closely on Syria and on Iraq.
And among the African affiliates of ISIL, which are claiming gains, is the Islamic State West African Province, or ISWAP, based in Nigeria. Weeks after rival group Boko Haram confirmed the death of its leader, Abubakar Shekau, a group of its fighters is now pledging allegiance to ISWAP. This message was in a video released by the fighters, which was produced by Islamic State's official media arm. The video fuels fears that ISWAP is consolidating control of the insurgency in northeastern Nigeria. Boko Haram and ISWAP have been engaged in a violent rivalry for several years, but if ISWAP absorbs Boko Haram fighters, ISWAP could focus its efforts on the Nigerian military. A 12-year insurgency has resulted in the deaths of at least 350,000 people. Millions more have been displaced. CGTN's Tony Waterman now joins us from Matera for more on this. So, Tony, what was the biggest takeaway from that meeting? Did it achieve its objectives?
Well, I think that the biggest takeaway is that there appears to be a pivot taking place, as you mentioned, focusing attention away from Iraq and Syria, where we've seen militant activity dwindling over the last couple of years. They're losing territory in that region and really shifting the focus to the African continent, where we have seen an increase in militant activity. As you mentioned, the Italian Foreign Minister Luigi Di Maio saying that there should be a working group formed to really address this emerging threat. That does not mean that these coalition forces are going to ignore what is taking place in Iraq and Syria. They're just going to put greater emphasis on Africa, particularly on Mozambique, the Sahel region, where we're seeing France unwind its military campaign. This is of a particular concern for Europeans, especially because the Sahel region is a migratory route into Europe, and the concern obviously being that you could see some militant fighters embedding themselves in refugee migration, people who are legitimately trying to get to Europe for a better life. The U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken also used this as an opportunity to urge coalition members to repatriate ISIS fighters, to bring them back home. He said that there are some 10,000 that are being held by Western-backed forces in northern Syria. He called this untenable, a situation that cannot go on forever. This is a particularly sensitive issue, though, for places like France and Britain, who have been victim to very violent terrorism attacks over the last couple of years. There's not a lot of political appetite to bring these individuals back home because there may not be the resources to actually keep tabs on them all the time. So they prefer to leave them jailed overseas than to bring them back home and try to put them into rehabilitation programs. Secretary Blinken, though, did point out that some nations are doing a good job at this. He pointed to Kazakhstan, which he said has repatriated some 600 fighters and their families, have put them into rehabilitation plans, really showing them as an example going forward. But the shift taking place now, really turning this attention, turning the resources to Africa, where we do see an emerging problem when it comes to the threat from ISIS.
All right, so Tony, talk to us more about the African discussion that's taking place today.
Well, I am in Matera, which is the one of the most continuously oldest inhabited places on Earth. You can see the houses here behind me. People used to live in caves in this area, and this is where the foreign affairs ministers and also development ministers from the G20 are meeting today for a one-day unprecedented summit. The focus is really on building back from the coronavirus pandemic, and in his opening remarks, the Italian Foreign Minister Di Maio said that the only way to really do that is to ensure that nobody is left behind. And U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in his opening remarks, said that perhaps more needs to be done when it comes to income inequality in the world, that this pandemic has exacerbated these inequalities, and he thought that G20 is the exact format to make that happen. You may remember during the early days of this pandemic, G20 nations suspended debt relief. They put forward some wiggle room for these countries to get their financial houses in order so that they could build back from this pandemic. The call now from the U.S. seems to be for debt relief, because for these low and middle income countries who are going to really struggle to get back on their feet in the wake of this pandemic, it is going to require a lot of money, trillions of dollars, for them to build their economies back, make sure that when they're building back, that money is being used wisely and they are more resilient. And the main focus of that, or a large focus of that, is on the African continent. Also discussions today when it comes to making sure that vaccines are getting out, that therapeutics are getting out to places. You may remember just last month in Rome, the EU pledged $1.2 billion to invest in production hubs, vaccine production hubs in Africa as part of a way to ramp up production on the continent, which is partly struggling to get their hands on vaccines at the moment because the COVAX facility has been so undersupplied. And of course, you have a lot of first world developed nations hoarding their supplies.
All right, Tony, we appreciate that update. Thank you very much. Tony Waterman live for us in Matera, Italy. Now, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has raised concerns about terrorist groups advancing in Africa. Speaking at the opening of the high-level conference of heads of counter-terrorism, Guterres stressed that supporting African countries to prevent and counter the threats must be a global priority. Guterres said Al-Qaeda and ISIL have continued to exploit social grievances and gender stereotypes to inspire lone actors and co-opt other groups.
More resources need to be marshaled towards addressing the grievances that terrorists exploit, standing up to hate speech and discrediting terrorist narratives. And victims and survivors have a key role to play. Youth should also be at the center of these efforts.
And joining us is Martin Ewe, Transnational Organized Crime Regional Observatory Coordinator for Southern Africa at the Institute for Security Studies. Thank you very much, Martin, for your time. So the UN Secretary General raises a very crucial point: youths to be at the center of counter-terrorism measures. How important is this in dealing with insecurity in Africa?
Of course, it's a factual statement because if you look at terrorism today in Africa or elsewhere, it's been dominated by the youth. So if you have the same youth to lead the counterterrorism effort, I think you are basically telling them to abandon the trade that they know so much. And I think there is no other effective manner to deal with counterterrorism or to deal with terrorism without through the horse's own mouth. So using the youth themselves, to stop terrorists, I think it's an effective measure. The Secretary General was speaking there from experience, knowing what's going on around the continent, and the fact that our youth have been primarily the victim and also the actors who have been involved in terrorist activities.
So there have been various military interventions in the Sahel, yet ISIL-affiliated groups appear to be gaining ground. Is this an indicator that the military approach to security is not working?
I think we've said it over and over again. It has become a song, a famous song now in Africa and I believe elsewhere, that the military solution cannot work. It has not worked anywhere. It will not work in Africa. So when countries react to terrorism through military, they are only delaying or even causing more havoc, as we've seen in many cases. There is no single situation that we can say where the military has successfully resolved a terrorist situation. So that doesn't exist. So we still doubt, why is it that the immediate reflexes of state to terrorist activities is the use of the military? We understand, of course, there's no way you can successfully resolve the terrorist problem without having to neutralize some of the threats, through the military solution. But it is only a tiny part of a comprehensive solution for terrorist activities. So therefore, our states are only being stubborn by insisting that the military solution is the only solution, because it is the most dramatic solution. It is one that it's very visible. Everyone sees it. They say, okay, that's a powerful state. They have powerful weapons. But on the ground, it has no impact. In the Sahel that you have mentioned, which has seen everything, the international community has deployed all sorts of arms. The state themselves have tried, but nothing has worked. That means we need to look for solutions elsewhere.
Okay, so we've seen France withdrawing its troops now from the Sahel, and perhaps this is going to provide the international community the opportunity to take a less, militaristic approach, so to speak. So what are the counter-terrorism measures should the international community put in place at this point?
Look, we need to be addressing the root causes of the problem, and I don't think that the French deployment is an opportunity for anyone, and I don't think that except the French are replacing their military with negotiators, with mediators, people who can speak to the locals, can talk to those who are carrying arms, those who are committing these terrorist activities. Then I would say probably it's an opportunity. But if they are just leaving a vacuum there without any solution, without the political dialogue ongoing, without any measure in place to solve the problem, to address the root causes of terrorism in the Sahel, then I don't think that it's an opportunity. It's a hazard that we are creating, because it could lead to even more deadly humanitarian conditions on the ground.
All right, Martin Ewi, we appreciate your insights. Thank you very much for joining us. Martin Ewi joining us via Zoom from Pretoria in South Africa. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, the army says that an Islamist militia with links to Islamic State is responsible for 2 blasts in the eastern city of Beni over the weekend. There has been increased security in the area with the subsequent closure of schools, churches and markets. One of the blasts occurred at a Catholic church and the other at a busy intersection. A suicide bomber was responsible for the second hit and died in the explosion. The army identified the bomber as a Ugandan national.
There was a bomb that exploded in the church, and we are staying far from it. This is a new church which is just 3 years old. This just happened, and we find ourselves far from our parish. Our presbytery is in the middle of the parish. My analysis of this is that this is a sign of insecurity that shows we are insecure. It continues to instill fear in the hearts of the Christians, because in our parish there are many displaced people who have fled the war in the bush and sought refuge in the city. And so when the war comes to the city itself, it's even worse.
The United Nations World Food Programme is calling for more funding to mitigate acute food shortage in South Sudan. The WFP is warning that without urgent attention, famine could become a reality for millions of people in the East African country. CGTN's Patrick Oyet has more.
The World Food Programme says by next month, around 108,000 people in South Sudan are expected to be in level 5 famine classification, which is a catastrophe stage of food insecurity. The acute food shortage is mainly in the eastern and northern parts of the country.
The people of South Sudan are suffering from an accumulation of shocks over the last few years, whether it be climate change, with the 2 years of unprecedented flooding that the country has faced, whether it's economic decline caused by the depreciation of the South Sudanese pound, the very significant increase in the cost of food in the country, and of course what has happened because of COVID-19 in terms of the interruption to supply chains and that's impact on the cost of living in the country.
The United Nations says there is an increase in the level of intercommunal violence which is disrupting agriculture. It warns that unless the insecurity problem is resolved, the country will continue to experience food shortages. The World Food Programme says an estimated 7.2 million people, representing 60% of the country's population, are expected to face high levels of acute food insecurity this year. South Sudan's government says it is working to address the problem of insecurity and support agriculture development in the country. The government says it has signed an agreement with the World Bank worth $113 million to support farmers with supplies like fertilizers, ox plows and insecticides to fight desert locusts.
The government is turning to agriculture and other related ministries to see how they can support the country, how they can support the economy, how we can grow enough food, not just for ourselves, not just for our families, but enough food to sell and eventually to export to the neighboring countries.
The United Nations World Food Programme says it needs funds to provide tools and training for those facing food insecurity. The organization wants to help people recover from the shocks and promote resilience in South Sudan. Patrick Koyet, CGTN, Juba, South Sudan.
You're watching Africa Live. Coming up in business news. Tanzania to study cryptocurrency as it readies to adopt it.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is high risk.
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan sees a future where cryptocurrency is part of the country's economy. She's told the country's financial chiefs to prepare for change. CGTN's Isaac Lukando has more.
Cryptocurrency trader Kaunda Balete is relieved that his favorite activity is now recognized by the government. He says from 2016, when he started trading, at least $22 million have already been transacted in Tanzania. Cryptocurrency, he believes, has been life-changing for many young people in the country.
If you tell them you have to be employed, they won't understand you because they know they are getting something they want from cryptocurrency. So there's a lot of benefits, but if you take time and learn. If you don't want to learn, then you lose money.
While the exact number of cryptocurrency traders in the country is unknown, some estimate it could be in the thousands. The country's president is asking financial experts to explore the potential benefits and pitfalls of cryptocurrency.
It's important that we work on these developments. We must be ready. When these changes come, they should not catch us off guard because we might feel we are not ready, but we may very well be overtaken by our own citizens.
The adoption of blockchain technology, the platform on which cryptocurrencies are traded, is on the rise globally. What makes the technology attractive is its perceived safety, enabling individuals and businesses to carry out digital transactions on a secure platform at a much faster rate. Africa is the second continent globally in terms of cryptocurrency adoption, particularly in peer-to-peer trading. Lack of access to traditional banking systems has made it easier for people in Africa to accept mobile money, and now cryptocurrencies. While no regulation on cryptocurrency exists, the Central Bank of Tanzania says it has already begun working on it. Sandra Chogo, author and developer of a blockchain technology curriculum for Tanzania's public accountants, says with over 4,000 cryptocurrencies in existence, regulation is a must.
There are some fake cryptocurrencies out there. You might think you've bought into a good one and expect it to increase in value, but it could turn out to be fake. Many end up losing even the capital they've invested.
Tanzania adopting cryptocurrency as legal tender in the purchase of goods and services may be a long way off. In the meantime, the government is hoping to lay the foundation for smooth transactions in the future. Isaac Lukando, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
High inflation driven by soaring food prices has pushed 7 million Nigerians into poverty, according to a new report by the World Bank. Africa's largest economy is struggling to contain sticky inflation just months after recovering from a recession partly caused by the COVID-19 pandemic and a plunge in crude oil prices. CGTN's Feli Haza reports from Abuja.
This market is normally one of Abuja's go-tos for cheap foodstuffs, but that has changed over recent weeks. Some shoppers here say the hike in food prices has gone to absurd levels.
I came to the market with a budget to buy some foodstuff that lasts me for a month. But funny enough, I could not even get enough. And it's so sad, it's so heartbreaking right now.
The hike, more than 100% of what we used to buy, it's really ridiculous. Everything is high. The meat, egg was usually 1,900. Now we're buying for 1,500. I really don't know. I don't know how we want to survive.
About 41% of the 200 million Nigerians live in poverty, and that figure is now worsening. The World Bank reports of 7 million more people slipping into poverty due to inflation. In February, the country recovered from a recession it slipped into last year due to impacts from the coronavirus and global fall in oil prices. Yet, Nigeria's economy is import-driven, meaning the country exchanges its naira for foreign currencies like the dollar to ship in products needed for consumption.
One of the major causes of inflation is our exchange rate. Imagine some years back that dollar was 160 something and 170. If you bring in good that period, it is in that comparison that the price of your good is. Now, dollar is what? Dollar is around almost call it 480 something. That's even official. If you go to unofficial, you get it worse. And by the time you bring in good, imagine how much it's going to be. Our inflation is not basically the COVID. COVID could be a part of it.
The country's Bureau of Statistics says the inflation rate is currently 17.9%, up from 12.4% the same period last year, with food prices accounting for over 60% of the total increase in inflation. Experts say until the country focuses more on producing enough food to feed its population and then ramp up exports, the inflation problem will continue to linger.
In order to drive down inflation, there must be economic activities. You must produce goods and services. And such goods and services have to sell in both local and international markets. We should look at agriculture. Agriculture gives the economy a base. That's why we say that agriculture is the mainstay of most economies in the world.
President Muhammadu Buhari has pledged to tackle rising inflation problems in the country while instructing the central bank not to give any money for food importation, rather issue more credit facilities to local farmers and food processors.
It's not clear how long the initiatives of the government will have a direct impact on the prices of foods at the markets, but the hope is that with such efforts, the inflation rates will be brought down to a barest minimum.
That could mean that more consumers can increase their buying power and avoid living below the poverty line of $1.90 per day. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
The world has more than enough renewable energy potential to comfortably make the transition from fossil fuels. That's according to the University of Technology in Sydney. According to their analysis, even if no new fossil fuel projects were built from today, carbon emissions from existing projects are still far too high to stay on course towards meeting the goals of the Paris Agreement. It also shows that this transition is not only required but completely feasible. In fact, all regions have enough renewable energy to provide energy access to all using existing technologies. This suggests that it is possible to meet the twin challenges of phasing out fossil fuels and increasing electricity access at the speed required through scaling up renewable energy. Close to a dozen African ministers have been meeting in Tunisia to seek ways to boost trade relations between the North and Sub-Saharan Africa. As CGTN's Adnet Shawashi now reports, the conference has also offered an opportunity for the private sector to augment its network following the creation of the Continental Free Trade Area.
Experts at Tunisia's fourth Financing, Investment and Trade in Africa conference discussed several topics, including the financial support in the continent, the major structuring themes for African economies, and the establishment of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Officials also shed light on the business environment, sectoral development strategies, as well as local transformation and industrialization in Africa.
This conference, the fourth edition, is becoming a real big conference in Africa, and the purpose of this conference is to make meeting between businessmen and business from Tunisia and from around Africa, and also the presence of international institution and financial institution is to found the possibility, the solution for financing our trade and our investment in Africa.
Ivorian Minister of State, Minister of Foreign Affairs, African Integration and Diaspora urged Tunisian firms to invest in her country in raw material processing. Kaunda Camara also called on Ivorian businessmen to invest in Tunisia as part of a win-win partnership.
Côte d'Ivoire decided to restructure its economy with focus on raw material processing. We call on Tunisian businessmen to come to help us process our raw materials. This will pave the way for the structural transformation of the economy.
The Minister of Youth, Entrepreneurship Promotion and Employment of Burkina Faso said the meeting in Tunis is highly important as it will foster the exchange of good practices and experiences in entrepreneurship and job generation.
Nous avons donc au niveau du Burkina Faso
In Burkina Faso, there are 150,000 to 200,000 job seekers each year, and the only solution is to encourage them to create their own startups and projects, considering that the current employment mechanisms cannot meet all needs.
The Tunisian president met with the African ministers who took part in the fourth edition of the International Conference on Financing Investment and Trade in Africa. Qais Said stressed the need to ensure optimal exploitation of natural and human resources available in Africa as part of a new development model. Experts called for setting up a platform in Tunisia to facilitate trade between North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. In addition, African officials and ministers urged decision makers to create a continental free trade area. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
You're watching Africa Live. Let's take a short break. Straight ahead. Cape Town's kelp forest named one of the new 7 wonders of the world.
Join us in global business and see Africa through our eyes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Tanzania, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
The Bond is a television quiz contest that tells African audiences the story of the Chinese Communist Party and the story of China-Africa cooperation in a lively and interesting contest. An award ceremony was held for this round's contest. Various representatives attended the event, including government officials, the Chinese ambassador to Burundi, and various media houses.
The television contest is an innovative project of cooperation between the China Media Group and various African media houses. It involves documentaries that tell the story of the relationship between China and Africa. The aim is to enrich the cultural life of the Burundian people.
Our programs allows our viewers to be able to find different themes that can inspire them in their development, in their daily lives. I already said in my speech is that this Sino-Burundian cooperation helps the radio television, National du Burundi, not only to diversify, but also to be able to learn lessons from elsewhere. China being ahead of Burundi, I hope that viewers can find their accounts. There are subjects that can deal with such aspect of life, and everyone will find subjects that interest him at fixed times, which allows them to take advantage of this Sino-Burundian cooperation.
1st of July 2021 is the 59th anniversary of Burundi's independence and also the centennial anniversary of the Communist Party of China. The Burundian audience also took this opportunity to express their congratulations.
The Chinese Communist Party has just passed 100 years of existence. In their program, we see that China is well organized. Now, when you go to China, you will see that all things are beautiful. There is a good organization which comes from this party. That is why I quote him a lot. It is a copy to other parties outside. It's a model. I congratulate the Chinese Communist Party very much.
At the end of the competition, nearly 18,000 responses were received from 28 African countries. The total audience of the program is estimated to be nearly 200 million people. Jin Keo, CGTN.
Over in South Africa, Cape Town's kelp forest has been named as one of the new 7 wonders of the world by Bloomberg. Also known as the Great African Sea Forest, it gained international recognition through My Octopus Teacher, a documentary based on a man's relationship with a sea mollusk. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
The Great African Sea Forest is a wonderland beneath the waves off the Cape Coast of South Africa. It features as the backdrop in the award-winning documentary My Octopus Teacher, done in conjunction with the Sea Change Project. The kelp forest has made Bloomberg's list of the world's new 7 natural and archaeological wonders.
The kelp forest ecosystem has a massive role in climate change, and in many parts of the world kelp forests have declined dramatically or disappeared altogether, and it's not a simple matter of just reversing. Once it's gone, it's gone. And I think with the sort of attraction from the My Octopus Teacher film and then having an added name of being a 7 natural wonder of the world, people might come and explore it.
Kelp is a microalgae which thrives in colder waters. It provides a rich ecosystem for millions of mystical creatures and an undersea marvel for curious humans.
The kelp forest has always been a very special place for me. I have dived all around the world, and it always surprises people when I say that the kelp forest is my most favorite place in the world to dive. It is like the forests of the land. The forest of the sea is a home to so much life. It is a place where biodiversity thrives. It takes care of the carbon that we so recklessly create.
This natural wonder has thrived compared to many others globally, which are under threat from rising sea temperatures caused by climate change.
The next generation is our future, and if we don't protect this environment and create that connection and that love, there will be nothing there for them. Whatever we can do now to inspire future generations is critical. The way we can do it at Sea Change, being predominantly media, filmmakers, storytellers, environmental journalists, and we do have a scientist in our team, is we continue to tell stories that are informed by science.
If it wasn't for the ocean, our planet wouldn't be a place where humans can live. All life on Earth is sustained by the ocean. So our actual existence and survival depends on the sea. But I think the more we talk about it and the more we shine the spotlight on this, like this nomination has done, the greater chance of success we have.
The Great African Sea Forest spans 1,000 kilometers and is estimated to be twice the size of the Grand Canyon in the US. It adds to Cape Town's allure as an international travel destination. Judy Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
And coming up in sports, Ghanaian boxer Samuel Taki